Theoretically, it works. There we go. All right. So we're on now. We're live. But I want to thank the panel that's here before. You have a panel of experts who, again, work tirelessly behind the scenes, not only for the safety of the community, but for the safety of the schools and all our students and staff that are in there. So I think you'll find tonight very informative. I hope you learn a lot. We're going to ask that you don't ask questions during the session, but please wait till the end when all the participants will be out in the foyer, and we'll take questions then. But we want to really honor your time. We certainly want to honor their time for taking their evening. And with that, I'm going to move us along, and I'm going to bring up my Director of School Safety, Chris Espedal, who helps coordinate all this. Chris.
Thank you, Scott. Well, I love my job. I love what I do, and I'm happy to be here. And hopefully you see that we're all friends. We work together, and we work really hard for the safety of your students and for the community. So I'm grateful that you're here tonight. Thank you for, as Scott said, coming out on a blustery evening to learn about the plans that are in place. I hope that when you leave here this evening, you feel confident in the collaboration, the cooperation, and the efforts that are in place in our county to keep students, staff, and the community at large safe. So again, thank you for being here. My job as Director of School Safety is to collaborate, to coordinate efforts, to work together to figure out how we can always improve the safety of students in Nevada County. We're always looking for best practices. What's the next best thing? Unfortunately, in emergency management, it's all based on lessons learned. Sometimes we have to learn the hard way. Other times, we just steal from somebody something that looks good. But at any rate, it's always best practices for our students. I serve as a liaison between the agencies and the schools, and believe it or not, we meet around a table monthly. All of the superintendents, administrators, and many of the agencies that you see here tonight, we meet monthly to talk about what's happening on the streets and in our schools. We do drills, and these ladies and gentlemen work with us, supervise those drills, not all of them, but some of them. And each month, I try to send out a what if to encourage principals to talk with their staff and their students about the what ifs, really keeping the conversations going so we're always on top of what could happen. Safety alerts are sent out. Anytime there's an incident that may involve a school site, we send out from the superintendent of schools office a safety alert so all of the schools, charter schools, private schools, public schools in Nevada County receive information on what's happening and how that might affect their student. And the greatest part of my job is I get to serve as an instructor for community emergency response teams. We have Teen CERT, high school students that go through 22 hours of training to learn search and rescue, triage, first responder skills, fire suppression, and they help us out during our drills and safety trainings. These students have an opportunity to learn about career choices, things that may interest them in the future. It looks great on their resumes and good on college applications. Bear River High School, Godoti, and Nevada Union are participating now in CERT training, and it's free of charge. It's provided by FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, and just a great resource for us to use these students to help us and to train them up for the next generation of first responders. I hope that this evening you'll leave trusting the process, that there are processes in place, best practices, as I said, for response to any critical incident that may occur on a school site or in the community. Those plans, the comprehensive school safety plans, are updated annually. They're improved, changed, looked at, researched, and made to be the best that they could possibly be for your students. I want to speak just for a moment about communication. I know that you want information as quickly as possible in the event of an emergency, especially on a school site. We work really hard to put out information that's vetted, that is true and accurate. And oftentimes that takes a little longer than you'd like. But trust the process that the information that you're receiving is information that is accurate. I know it's hard not to look at the information that may be coming through on social media and trust that. But look for that information that's coming either from law enforcement, fire services, or superintendent of schools. As well, we have collaborated with UBANet, happening now, and we will be providing them with accurate, up-to-date information as things transpire on school campuses. When you receive information from the school, it's really important that you follow what's being asked of you. It is for the safety of your students, for the staff, and for yourselves. In order to respond to an incident, we need open roads, we need open airways, we need cell towers that can take the overflowing of calls coming in. That's where I take you back to trust the process. Please follow the directions from the school communications, and if you can, limit those calls to your students' cell phones. When systems are overwhelmed, everyone's overwhelmed, and systems often break down. We saw a lot of that in response to the most recent campfire. And many of us up here on the stage today were deployed to that and saw firsthand what happens when systems are overwhelmed. So if you could, please try and follow communication that comes from the school and trust that we're doing the very, very best we can to get it out to you as quickly as possible. Most importantly, I think that talking with your children about incidents that could occur is important. Talk openly and provide guidance. Have those conversations about where would we meet if we got separated. Knowing that the school has reunification sites in their plans, and they will put that information out to you where to go to pick up your child should we have to evacuate a school site. Tell your children that those plans are in place, those things that they're learning about at school. And of course, talk with them about their concerns, the things that scare them, the things that they're confused about. Give them that time that they need to de-escalate their fears and to give you opportunity to pour into their lives those arms wrapped around them to make them feel safe at school. Talk about peer pressure and cyber safety and kindness, being kind to one another all the time. It's important to listen carefully and to not overreact when they come home with those stories from school. Just like we have to vet all our information, be sure the information you're receiving is accurate. And don't hesitate to call me at my office or somebody at your school site to be sure that the information your children are bringing home is the correct information. I hope that you received a handout as you came in the door tonight, the safety pamphlet that we put together, so you have something to go home with. In case something happens or you need to get a hold of someone, you'll know how to do that. As well, we have resource tables up in the foyer. Please, when this presentation is complete, stop at each of those tables and find out the resources that are available. This is an amazing county. I have the opportunity to travel and respond to disasters. And I can tell you that Nevada County is on the cutting edge of school safety. I sit on the state task force for school safety. We're going above and beyond, and I'm proud to be a part of that here in Nevada County. Finally, model those healthy ways to handle stress and crisis. Unfortunately, so many of us experienced firsthand or have somebody that we know that experienced the tragedies from the campfire. That goes down to our children. Our children see it on TV, they hear about it at school, and they hear us talking about it. Model how to handle that stress. Yes, things are scary. Yes, that did happen. How can we work through that? How can we walk through that? So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for caring about the safety of your students. It's my privilege now to introduce to you our new sheriff, Nevada County Sheriff Shannon Moon.
Thank you, Chris. This is some, new times with new norms on how we respond to emergencies. I'm proud to be a partner with every single person on this stage. We have worked for many years together and on many incidents. So when you start having those relationships, you start really seeing people shine when we start responding to incidents. When we did the School Safety Summit in Bear River last year, I was proud to say that I have children attending the Pleasant Ridge School District. So I was also a parent wanting to make sure that we were responding to emergencies. I'm proud to say I'm an alumni of Nevada Union High School, so it's fun to come back to this high school and still see some of the educators and the buildings that I grew up in. That's a part of our history. That's a part of the commitment that we have in the Nevada County Sheriff's Office to making sure that we provide a safe environment for not only our community members, but especially for our children. I'm honored to be representing the Sheriff's Office and the extremely dedicated and committed staff that we have. We are committed to training. We are committed to assuring that our staff not only have that whiteboard training, the policy training, but actually training in scenario, in chaos when you start making decisions under that much adrenaline. And we've done a lot of that training this last year. I'm going to head the microphone off. I just promoted Sean Scales to lieutenant, so I'm welcoming him to the team of being in the management position and presenting at different things. Sean's going to go over more of the Sheriff's Office role and what we do as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer of the County of Nevada.
Good evening. So a lot of you may be wondering what our responses are, what your roles are in regard to a critical incident in Nevada County, and what you can expect when you run across a critical incident. The fact is that it's going to be controlled chaos for a while, and you guys need to prepare for that. You may have seen things on the news. You may have seen emergency vehicles everywhere and ambulances and all those kinds of things, and that can happen in this community, and you just have to prepare for it. Realize that students may be required to shelter in place for long periods of time. Recently, there was a shooting on the East Coast. It took 90 minutes to clear a 20,000 square foot building. Imagine that here at NU. Imagine having to clear every single structure here, depending upon what the actual threat happens to be. It can take a long period of time. And there's a difference between a lockdown and a shelter in place. Know what those are. Know that one means instruction's still going to be going on, but they're just staying in their classrooms. Versus a lockdown, they're locked down. It may involve locking doors at the schools, locking classrooms, keeping people off campus. All those things can come into play. You might be directed to different pickup locations than you're used to. This might change. The fact is we live in a rural area with not so many parking lots. It may come into play that maybe fire has set up an incident command center in your usual pickup lot. So you may be diverted to another location. It may be completely separate from where you're used to going. So know this county. Know the major inroads and of this county and know how to get different places by multiple routes. On the roadways might be jammed, so expect that you may not be able to get to your school or your pickup location by the regular routes. Keep a map. Everybody's used to GPS and cell phones. That stuff fails. A map book does not. So remember that stuff. Keep it in your car. It'll cost you $20, but it might potentially save you some fret down the line. We get lots of questions about threat assessments and how we go about handling them. Now with social media, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, you name it, they can arise very easily. A kid might hear somebody over saying something, or they heard it from somebody who heard it from somebody else. And a lot of times we have to vet that out. We don't just release information and we don't act off of what we think is going to happen. We vet the information, we assess the threat. We might contact family members. We might contact the people's friends on social media. We make sure that it's safe for school to go on the next day if the event arises after school is let out. So all of that takes place. Officers going to err on the side of caution. If it's not safe to have school that day, or kids need to stay in lockdown for a while until we get sorted out, that's what we're going to do. So we're going to make sure that your kids are safe. And realize that your kid may not be involved, but they may be friends with someone. So you might be contacted at midnight with a deputy knocking on your door and saying, hey, I need to talk to your son about his friend. And that can very much happen. And it's not, your son or daughter may have nothing at all to do with it, but they may be contacted, and that can happen. Some instructions for you guys. The number one thing is going to be to stay calm. If you get that panic phone call from your kid, you're going to need to be the voice of reason on the phone. If you amp up your children, it's only going to make it harder to make sure they're safe and make sure that you can get to them at a later point. Wait for instruction from the schools through your usual methods or until you hear it from law enforcement. Don't just rely on another parent who told you the pickup location is such and such. Wait till you hear where it is actually at from a solid source. Please don't flood the schools with extra bodies. If we're trying to keep your children safe, the last thing we need is a whole bunch of people showing up. We don't know what's going on. We don't know who you are. We don't know who your kids are. We need to make sure the school is safe, and then we'll arrange for you to get your kids picked up. This one doesn't get talked about enough. Arrive safely. If you drive crazy, if you cause an accident, if you yourself are involved in an accident, more resources that could go to saving your child are now pulled out of the field. So realize that arriving safely is very, very important. Already covered a little bit, but know your alternate routes and know your terminology that your school has. Talk to your kids about it. Make sure they know what a lockdown is, what a shelter in place is. And the new one with fires being the way they are, realize that a shelter in place for law enforcement and from the school may be different than a shelter in place from the fire folks. Those are two very different things, and I'm sure they'll cover it at a later point. So over the past year, 2 years, we've been doing more and more training for critical incidents at schools. We've had the DA's office come out, Grass Valley Police Department, Nevada City Police Department, probation. We all work together because we realize that if there is an incident at a school, I may not get to go in with my regular partners. It may be whoever shows up, and let's just go get a group together and go handle what we need to handle. So we've been training together more and more. We use simunitions, role players, all of those things. We've done about 10 training days over the past year, and we did it for about the last 6, 7, or 8 years. We've been doing it more and more. And obviously we have to choose times when the schools aren't in session, because it might freak out you and the kids if we're doing it when you are here. The schools are nice enough to fix everything we break, and they don't charge us for it. So we hit multiple schools throughout the county, and we don't really have to, we're not limited to any one location. So that's been going on more and more, and it's going to continue in the future. And the scenarios can range from anything from ambush, hostage situation. We try and put an incident within an incident, so we'll give officers direction. Hey, there's an active shooter at such and such location, and then we try and give them something they're not going to anticipate, just so they're ready for absolutely every scenario. We have school resource officers at NU and at Bear River. Be aware that those guys don't just handle complaints at those schools. They'll go to whichever school, and if they're not able to handle it, then a deputy in the field will. So their role is they're a resource for the schools. They're a resource for you guys. They're more than willing to talk with you guys, with your kid, if you're having a situation that needs to be mediated. They're not just somebody to write tickets in the parking lot or make sure that an active shooter doesn't get too out of hand at a school. That's not their primary role. Their primary role is to engage with the students and make sure that they're getting what they need and you guys are getting what you need. And it's an added bonus that they can possibly prevent an active shooter from happening or get to know a kid before something starts to go down a path that none of us want it to go down. And who knows, down the line, they may be able to rapport with those students and it may end up saving lives further down the line for all of us. So they're a really good resource for us. And the last thing I'm going to cover is our role in a wildfire response. Our primary role is going to be evacuation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to contact the incident command, usually fire, and we're going to see what exactly they need. Stuff can get lost between dispatch centers and over the radio. We find out exactly what they need evacuated and what type of evacuation it is. As officers filter in, they'll go ahead and evacuate those areas as need be. They'll provide traffic when they can. We lean on county roads for the county maintained roads. We also use Caltrans for 49 and 20. We use California Highway Patrol to also help us out where we can. It's not just us doing it out there, though. It's going to be probation. We have DA investigators come help us. We have Grass Valley PD come help us, Nevada City PD. We have officers from Lincoln, Roseville PD, you name it. Placer County is a huge help to us. They always help us out when we pull the big red handle. So it's not just going to be tan and green out there. It's going to be a lot of different agencies. The first few hours are going to be pretty chaotic. Evacuations are going to take a while. You guys have to be part of that process, and you guys have to, again, know how you're going to get out. Don't just be limited to going the same way home every day. Continued patrol in an area that's already been evacuated is something we have to consider. Looting can happen. And there's people who don't evacuate, so we have to make sure that they're safe as well. So it continues to be a drain on resources. That's where we get OES, the Office of Emergency Services, involved, and they'll go ahead and help us out and get us personnel when we need it. Logistics are a huge part of it. When we have outside agencies, how are we going to talk to them on the radio? So now we need to provide radios to a bunch of people that don't work for our agency so we can all talk to each other and communicate. Those are all things that need to be considered, and we take it very seriously when we're going to handle one of these incidents. Over the past couple of years, the wildland fire drills have become more and more common. We did Wildwood last year in addition to Alta Sierra. This year we're doing Lake of the Pines on April 7th, and we're doing a Nevada City exercise on May 19th. It's a collaborative exercise with a lot of agencies involved. A lot of work goes into it. It's something they take very, very seriously. And once again, there's multiple scenarios with a lot of different things going on. So that's pretty much all I have to say. Other than that, in regard to the exercises and the incidents when they happen, they tie up a lot of resources, time, roads, all those kinds of things. We saw in the campfire that their IC was at Butte College. On the second or third week, they had to move it to a completely different location because Butte College said, we got to get school back going on again. So just be aware that incident commands may change. You may see vehicles where you've never seen them before. It's just something you have to be prepared to adapt to when we're dealing with one of these big incidents. With that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Gamelgard from Grass Valley PD.
Thanks, Sean, and thanks for having us here. As the sheriff and everybody before me has said, it's a privilege to work with all these folks up here. We all wear different uniforms, work for different agencies, but I think we all have the same thing in mind, which is community safety, and as it relates to schools, obviously our kids. Many of us have kids who go to local schools, and that's something that is near and dear to our heart. Many of us went to these schools, and so it's important to us. Lieutenant Scales talked a lot about the evacuation components and kind of the emergency preparedness, and I think the biggest thing that he said there is a little bit what I'm going to talk about related to something different, and I'm going to talk about sort of cybersecurity and keeping your kids safe online. But what it really comes down to is situational awareness. Going through scenarios in your head about what ifs, the things that Chris Espedal talked about that they practice at school. What if there was a fire in my neighborhood? What if my kids were told to shelter in place at school because of a wildfire or because of a threat in the community? And work through those situations with the people that live in your household, with family members that might assist you in one of those situations, and then of course with your children as they're age appropriate on how you're going to deal with those situations, so that you guys are all on the same page on how you're going to communicate, that maybe you won't be able to communicate, and then ultimately how you're going to resolve the situation based on the circumstances that are dealt. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, cyber safety and just some of the situations going on in today's world. How many of you guys have heard or seen or talked to your kids about the Momo challenge and that, we'll call it situation? Did you know that actually there's no validated cases of that in the United States? That image was created in 2016 by a Japanese special effects company, to the best of the research. But it took America by storm, and actually one of the most concerning statistics from that is that Kim Kardashian posted it. She has 129 million followers. So that's pretty concerning if Kim Kardashian has 129 million followers, and that she has the ability to put something like that out and have it go viral. So it's much like what we see in these emergencies with Nevada County PEEPs and happening now and all this stuff. So another message is vet the information. But what I think is really interesting about this Momo challenge thing is that it comes down to talking to our kids. I have a 10-year-old, 9-year-old, 5-year-old, and a baby, and talking to the two younger ones, they'd actually heard about it. So people are talking about it, but if we're not verting to our kids, they're not going to come home and necessarily talk to us about it because they might be embarrassed. They might think it's inappropriate and things like that. Up in the foyer, I have some documents that you're welcome to take with you. They're actually contracts that you can talk to your kids about and actually get mutual agreement and sign them. They're related to social media use, cell phone use, and gaming. A lot of these behaviors and risk factors that come into play start on those platforms. One of the topics here that I was going to hit on is human trafficking. When we think about human trafficking in Nevada County, A, it's here. B, all of us are thinking about it and working towards making sure it doesn't affect our families and people in our community. But it also doesn't look necessarily the way we think about it from the movies and from the big cities. All this stuff starts with stuff that we can probably see at home if we're really real about thinking about where this stuff starts and having conversations with our kids. Monitor your kids' activities on these platforms. Monitor who they're talking to online and in the gaming platforms. Be cautious of older contacts that they might be having. Be cautious of fake profiles as it relates to some of the cases we've seen locally related to human trafficking. Watch for activity related to drug abuse and progressive drug abuse. That's actually where we see some of the most human trafficking in Nevada County, is really through transactional sexual transactions related to drug abuse. And then lastly, social media. I already talked a little bit about it. It's situational awareness to that. Go through the what ifs with them. Talk to them about who they're interacting with and the risk factors. And have in place a mechanism where you are able to monitor that activity. And in the long run, they'll appreciate that you do it, although it might be a difficult conversation to have up front. So I know that's a little different direction than the critical incident awareness, but I think it's equally as important. And then I'm also going to turn it over now to Fire Chief Mark Butchern with the Grass Valley Police Fire Department. Police Department, you wish.
Yeah. Hello, Police Department. Good evening. My name is Mark Butchern. I'm the Fire Chief for the City of Grass Valley and City of Nevada City Fire Departments. And I'm going to drop the laptop, so hold on. Perfect. Thank you. So I'm going to talk this evening a little bit about resources. You heard the Lieutenant mention resources a second ago, and I'm going to talk a little bit about local government resources, in particular how that relates to you here locally right now sitting in this room and your students that attend this school. So the City of Grass Valley, City of Nevada City, and Nevada County Consolidated Fire operate in what's called a joint operational area. We have 7 fire stations and 1 battalion chief on daily. We interact with CAL FIRE and the U.S. Forest Service, and Chief Matthias is going to more eloquently speak about the CAL FIRE interaction here in a few minutes. But we provide fire protection for and or EMS protection for the community that your students are in. So, you know, how many fire engines are around here? Why are there so many at sometimes at one point, and are there enough to handle situations such as wildfire and those things? So of those 7 fire engines, they're staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They respond into this school on a day, well, I won't say a daily basis, but they'll respond into the school on a routine basis. In fact, the interoperability between the 3 agencies that I just mentioned is really an amazing thing. In fact, so you're sitting in a room right now that you're actually in the county, and the city, the service that you would get if you dialed 911 on your telephone right now would come from a city fire engine if you had a medical emergency. If you have a fire at this facility or a vegetation fire is threatening this facility, you're going to have a reinforced response not only from our local government agencies but also from CAL FIRE. And again, Chief Matthias can more eloquently speak to that. So what's this mean for your students? Well, you know, all of us up here work together, as has been stated a couple of times, on a daily basis. And the interoperability and the mindsets, the skill level of all the persons that you see here and the agencies that are represented here is extremely professional. I've had the opportunity to work in Southern, Central, and now in Northern California, and I can tell you that it is a second to none here of the ability of the individuals that you see sitting here and their men and women that work for them. So I didn't get to have a whole lot of time, but I just wanted to mention that interoperability, kind of how all that works. Know that your students are well taken care of, the fire, law, and EMS side, from the individuals that you see up here. We always have the best mindset for them, and we do our best to create a safe environment. Right? And now it's Commander Stephenson.
Good evening. One thing I want to share with you, kind of reiterate Chris, the lieutenant, the sheriff, and chiefs, both chiefs actually. Again, my name's George Stephenson. I have almost 25 years on with the Highway Patrol. In my career, I've worked from South Central Los Angeles to Alturas, 11 total field commands. The reason I share that with you, I've been blessed with working at various places throughout the state, like Chief Patron talked about, North, Central, and South. And I can tell you're truly blessed to have the agencies up here. The cooperation here, as he said, second to none. I think it's even better than that. Out of all the counties I've worked in, the vested interest in your children and the communities is far better than anywhere I've ever worked. So that's why I wanted to share that. A couple things I want to go over real quick. CHP's response to any emergency. We always respond initially for the preservation of life. So whether it's in a city or in the county with the sheriff or the police chief, they're going to say, hey, we need help evacuations, or we need help going door to door, and we're going to give all our immediate resources to what they need. Secondly, we're going to be backfilling in from other areas, our surrounding areas, whether it be Yuba Sutter, Auburn. They're going to be backfilling, and while all these dynamics are going on, the incident commander, whether the sheriff or the police chief, they're going to be or fire, they're going to be sitting around maps going, okay, we need these traffic control points, or as I say, TCPs, put in all these areas to keep people out and to get fire in. So all our backfilling resources are going to be working with the incident commander and doing exactly what they need to get those fire engines or extra law enforcement personnel in there. And I really want to hit home with that because, as Chris highlighted, if the roads are clogged up, they can't get there. So really take the advice of communications that your school districts or your local law enforcement sends out, because we've seen in other natural disasters and other disasters across the state that we can't get there. And we'll end up having to push cars off the road, bring in caterpillars, and literally pile up cars to get in. If we can't get in, we can't help your students, your children. And another thing I really want to drive home is an educational perspective to our community. And I love this saying, one thing about planning, in an emergency, nothing ever goes as planned. But what that planning does is it provides our team up here with the foundation to save lives. Even in the chaos and the stress, you're going to fall back on what you planned, even though nothing's going as planned. And as we saw out of the campfire, lives were saved. Nothing went as planned in the campfire. They had a very extensive evacuation plan. So the one other thing I want to say, when CHP is coming in, some of the resources we bring in will be our helicopters and our airships. That'll help law enforcement on the ground determine ingress routes, egress routes. With the incident command post, they're going to tell us what they need locked down in a region. And the airships, as we saw in the campfire, will actually coordinate the officers on scene, because you can't see anything from the ground, right? So it's great collaborative efforts from everybody. Those are really the primary points I just wanted to briefly touch on tonight. Overall, I'm going to introduce my public information officer, Mike Steele. And because we go way beyond, as with the Sheriff's Department, way beyond safety with our young people than just emergency incidents, but everyday education, especially with our younger drivers. So with that, Officer Steele is going to discuss our educational programs to our communities.
Hello. So my name is Mike Steele. I'm the Public Information Officer for the Highway Patrol here in Grass Valley. I spent the last 9 years here at this command, and I don't plan on going anywhere unless I'm dumb enough to promote here pretty soon. But everybody here has got to talk about doom and gloom and fire and everything else, so I get to bring some jocularity back to the conversation. So I get to educate people. I don't have to deal with all the doom and gloom lately. I like to educate your children, and I don't shy away from any of the topics. I cover DUI, I cover safe driving, I cover distracted driving, and I teach all ages and all ranges. I actually have curriculum from the elementary school, preschool ages, all the way up to 90-year-old drivers. So with the education aspect on that, what we do offer, and I was actually brought in here last year, I had the opportunity to teach all of Nevada Union who wanted to attend, was Impact Teen Drivers, which is a huge resource that we have. It's grant funded by OTS, Office of Traffic Safety and National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. They give me the tools and some other resources to come and teach children about distracted driving. That's what that curriculum's all about. I also teach Start Smart, which we have just completely revamped the program, I found out, so I get to go down to Sacramento and relearn it again next week. And then the other two big programs we have with the Every 15 Minutes, that one's a little bit harder for me to manage. That is a 100% dedicated school-wide. That's very in-depth in the planning. But that does affect the entire school when we do that. Very impactful program, very strong program, but it's custom tailored and the timing has to be right for that program. Also, we have the Roman Angels support a program called Survive the Drive. They will be doing that again April 20-something. It's the last Saturday in April. And that's going to be right here at the fire station on Station 2, right? Yeah. What that is that, and that's a free program to your children. It's a $50 kind of deposit up front, but once you graduate that class, and everybody graduates, I make sure of that, you get that money refunded back to you. Plus, the sponsors usually throw in an incentive of a gift certificate or something like that. But what we do is we go over safe aspect of driving. There is actual behind the wheel instruction in that class. Nothing high speed, it's basically vehicle placement. So with the Start Smart though, that's the program that I really want to promote right now because that is the easiest one, the most portable one. I can teach it, it takes up to an hour, sometimes up to 2 hours. But it's easy, it's portable, and I can teach that on the fly anywhere. So if any school resource wants to just have me come in for one period of their class and teach that, I've been more than happy to do that. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Chief Funk.
You know what? Thank everybody for coming tonight. My name is Jerry Funk, I'm Deputy Chief with Nevada County Consolidated. And I got some extra fire folks with me here tonight. Our Fire Marshal Terry McMahon, Don Wagner from Penn Valley, Jim Mathias is going to speak here in a second. Because we know there's going to be a lot of questions about fire stuff. We all have a lot of questions about fire stuff. So again, we're going to be in the foyer afterwards. So write down your questions. Don't forget them. We'll be up there and hopefully be able to answer them. So this first slide is Paradise Elementary School prior to November 8th, 2018. The school didn't fare too well. We've all heard of these different recent events, these fast-moving, destructive wildfires, and they've been all over the state. They've been in Southern California, Napa, Santa Rosa, Redding, and most recently Paradise. These are rapidly changing fires. Regardless if we have the entire Army in place ahead of time to mitigate these fires, there's no catching them, there's no stopping them. So, we're having to evacuate cooperatively with all our partners here, providing for life safety and getting everybody to safe areas as quickly as possible. Where we're experiencing these mass evacuations, and you all saw it on the news for Paradise, was the road systems are quickly overwhelmed. Just think of normal traffic at 3:30 in the afternoon in front of Nevada Union High School. Or if you're heading home on the freeway where it merges down to one lane after McKnight, southbound Highway 49, what's that look like at 5 o'clock? We can all see that. That's just normal routine traffic. And if we have a large evacuation and we're not only evacuating schools, we're evacuating the region also, you can imagine how those road systems are going to be plugged up quickly. Chris touched on this earlier, is a failure of infrastructure. We've all become really reliant on our cell phones for communications, mapping, everything else. And one of the things they're experiencing a lot of these fires is these systems can only manage so much data at a time, so many calls at a time. They're being overwhelmed. And the evacuation, or the situation in Paradise, some of the cell towers were compromised by the fire pretty rapidly. So we have infrastructure failure. We have the power's out, landlines are out, cell phones are out. What are we going to do? So this all leads to all of us having to have a plan. Preparation, have a plan, prepare for wildfire. And again, I only have a couple minutes up here, so we're not going to get in depth to it, but there's a lot of good information we can share with you guys afterwards up top. But I can't stress this enough, is having a plan. Have a go bag, whether it's in your vehicle at home. That's important documents, medications, those types of things that you can't get with your cell phone charger. Hopefully the system's still working. We talk about evacuations. A lot of folks are asking, what about evacuation routes? You know, which way do I go if there's a fire? Well, we're not going to know until the fire occurs, and the weather conditions, the areas it's impacting. But what we find is people are creatures of habit. Most everybody, when you travel to Nevada Union High School today, you probably drove the same way you always drive to Nevada Union High School tonight. So what if that route was closed? Do you know another way? If we had to leave right now and we had a fire impacting Nevada City and could not go right, do you know the roadway systems? Sounds simple at Nevada Union, but when you get to some of these more rural schools, a lot of folks don't know. They just know one way in, one way out. So make sure you're familiar with the area, where you live, where the alternate routes are, at your home too. Okay, if I live in this area and the fire's impacting here, how do I get out if my normal means of egress is blocked? So have a plan ahead of time in evacuation. Kind of goes into your neighborhood, knowing your neighborhood. The last piece is communication. And we heard these extraordinary numbers at the campfire of 2,000-3,000 people missing. And a lot of that happened because the infrastructure failures of communications and folks not having a plan. If my family is going to notify my neighbors down the street that we're safe, but they're also evacuated, boy, what's my plan? You should, if you choose somebody to communicate to of your well-being that's outside of the impacted area. If you have a grandmother that lives in San Jose, maybe you communicate with your family, hey, this is our point of contact. If we need to evacuate, if we get in a situation where we're separated as a family, we check in with our grandma in San Jose, and she can be the roll call person for that. One of the things we've been going around to the schools, and we've been doing a lot of training with staff at various schools, is sheltering in place. Again, this is different from the shelter in place on the law enforcement side, but what happens if we are impacted in a situation where we cannot get the buses in or out of the school? And we're developing plans with staff as how to mitigate that system or that situation, keep those folks sheltered in place, keep those children in a common area of the school. Again, this is a last resort. Know that on the fire service side of stuff, why resources are stretched thin, if we get a report that a school is sheltering in place, that's going to be a top priority for the responding resources. Those initial resources are going to go to that school and defend that school to keep your students safe. We talked about a little bit on all sides of the influx of parents. Imagine Nevada Union High School and all 1,500 parents, or maybe there's no communication and we have 3,000 parents because everybody's coming, grandma's coming, everybody else, influxing the roadway system as we're trying to get students out of the area or sheltering in place, getting resources in, and everybody's coming in. So really, we want to make sure that there's a good communication system in place and you're going to those resources that we've discussed earlier to find out what the plan is for your student, where the reunification is going to happen. Are we taking everybody from Nevada Union High School and we're going to take them over to Lyman Gilmore and reunify over at Lyman Gilmore School with your students? So follow that communication link so you know where those folks are going to be. Lastly is it's hard to say. I have kids that go to school too. We all do. That's why we're here. and we're going to want to make sure our kids are safe, but we really need to count on the system that works and have confidence in the system that every possible measure will be taken to keep your children safe. So what this all boils down to is again, we all need to take personal responsibility and have a solid plan. Again, I encourage you to field your questions. I know you're going to have many. We want to be prepared individually, and again, have a plan, have a plan, have a plan. So thank you very much. Next up is Jim Mathias from CAL FIRE.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for the opportunity to talk about how we're going to make your students, the staff here, and the visitors as safe as possible. Sheriff Moon talked about it earlier, how important it is for all of us to talk and communicate because we work better together. There really aren't enough resources to do what we need to do sometimes individually, so we have to work together as a team. We communicate all the time. Sheriff Moon and I were talking a little earlier, and she goes, hey, I just promoted Lieutenant Scale, so I'm going to ask him to wear a tie. So if he asks you, tell him that. That's my eloquent speech. There you go. Okay. So I was asked to talk about what resources we have available as far as the state and how they all work together here to help protect the community, students, everybody that's visitors and staff, and anybody that may be coming through the area. So all important stuff, right? CAL FIRE is kind of one of those things like we know that they're there in the summertime, but where are they the rest of the time? It's the second largest fire department in the world. We fight between Chicago Fire and us about who's bigger from year to year. So what does that mean to you? That means that your state fire department is pretty darn big, and we communicate a lot. And it's broken up into 21 units up and down the state of California. So our local unit encompasses 3 counties. It encompasses Nevada County, Yuba County, and Placer County. I'm in charge for CAL FIRE of Nevada County, Yuba County, and part of Sierra County, the western slope of Sierra County. In that area, we have 21 engines. We have 3 bulldozers. We have 7 hand crews, depending upon the staffing level at our inmate camp up at Washington Ridge. And we also have our Grass Valley Air Attack Base, which is Air Attack, which is what people commonly refer to as a spotter plane, 2 tankers, and for the last 2 years we've had a Type 1 helicopter, which is the biggest type helicopter we call an exclusive use that's dedicated to us out of this area. So we all work together pretty well. Chief Boutron talked about it earlier about how many engines the JOA has. That's the Grass Valley City, Nevada City, and Nevada County consolidated. In Nevada County, what we would have available pretty immediately is 11 staffed engines. We would have, on the local government side, we would have 6 more CAL FIRE engines in Nevada County to add to that mix for a total of 17, right, for the educators here? I didn't Common Core that. Sorry. So that's how many engines we have. Then we have the dozers that are available in our air attack base, which we're really lucky to have very close to us. It's just a thunderous punch when it comes to wildfire in this area to really have those aircraft and those resources. So how do we all work together? Who does what? All that kind of stuff. Well, when you pick up the phone and call 911, raise your hands for how many people really care what the door says when it gets there to help you. And for the people that are not able to see, no one raised their hand. Because nobody cares what the door says. We don't either. We just want to get to you. That's what you're entrusting us to do, is to get to you. And we send the closest resource, the closest available resource. So there's different property management areas like the city of Grass Valley, the city of Nevada City. That's what we commonly refer to as LRA, or the local response area. And then there's the SRA, which is the state response area. That's anything outside of an LRA area, like an incorporated city, that you folks, that's your property if you live outside of the cities. That's what we're entrusted to protect in the watershed in the state of California with our cooperators from local government. And then outside of that is all the federal response area, which is the Tahoe National Forest, BLM lands, national parks like Yosemite, that sort of thing. So that's great information, Jim, but how does that help us out? Well, that helps us out because we have all these resources that are in play to protect those entities. And many years ago, in the early 70s, they started to have the big Santa Ana winds in Southern California, right? So they came up with an incident command system, which helps us to manage these large incidents. And the state of California developed the Office of Emergency Services, which kind of manages some contracts and mutual aid. So there's two types of aids that we use. It's automatic aid and mutual aid. The chief already talked about it earlier, that you are sitting in an area that's in the county, but the city engine is the closest engine that responds into here. The same is true, for example, if you're in Chief Wagner's area. He's the chief of Penn Valley Fire District. He has engines that are right outside of Lake Wildwood and in Penn Valley. And if you live on Newtown or Jones Bar out that direction, the closest engine is one of the city engines that's going to come to you. You don't care what it says on the door. You just want help, right? So we send the closest engine that we can, whether it's a medical, fire, hazardous material incident, vehicle accident. We send the closest resource that we can, regardless of whose property, so to speak, it is. And so that's our automatic aid. Our mutual aid is when some area is depleted, we can call our neighbors and say, hey, we don't have enough resources to help us out. So that commonly happens in Nevada County with ambulances. There's really only 6 staffed ambulances in Nevada County and Western Nevada County, not including Truckee, that are able to respond to calls. And frequently that is depleted. So the local ambulance company out of Sierra Nevada Hospital will have to go to Chief Wagner and he'll bring his ambulance up to help us cover. So that's the automatic aid, mutual aid, and some of the resources that you have available. And trust me, we're working very hard to make sure that we maintain relationships, train together with our law enforcement partners, and everybody pretty much is working together the best that we can. To support that, we've started to create an incident support team. So that means that the law enforcement agencies, OES, fire agencies all get together and we train together regularly, so if there was a large incident, we'd be able to help each other out. So with that information, I'm going to bring up John Gulsarian from the Office of Emergency Services, and he'll talk eloquently as well.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm John Gulsarian, Nevada County Office of Emergency Services Program Manager. I'm a Paradise, or was a Paradise Elementary alumni. I've talked to Paradise Elementary kids quite often, just for my job there at OES. So today we're going to talk real quick on Code Red. How many people are signed up for Code Red? Code Red is the emergency mass notification system for Nevada County. Very good. There was a lot of hands that came up. I'm glad to see that. In October of 2017 at Lake Wildwood, an audience of about 200, probably 25 hands went up. What we have noticed about Code Red is we have to keep coaching folks to sign up for Code Red, and that's a continuous thing, so you're going to hear it multiple times. We generally get about 300 people to sign up every month for Code Red. In October of 2017, we had 4,500. In November of 2018, 2,500. What's key about those months? October fires here, campfire November. So folks are signing up afterwards, and we really want them to sign up beforehand. It's important. We want you to sign up as many phone numbers as you can, text, email, all that good stuff, because it gives us more avenues to communicate with you. One thing we get concerned about is we're trying to get that message out as fast as we can, because we know the power is going to go out, we know the cell towers are going to burn up, and other infrastructure is going to go up in smoke. So we try to get that message out quick. By chance, maybe the cell tower goes out, but you might get the email. You might get a text. Email is important too, because after the incident, we'll be able to send stuff to you, documents, maps, other information that we can give you a lot better than a 40 or 1 minute telephone call through Code Red. The Code Red phone numbers up there. Let me see. Yeah, we went one slide ahead, but that's okay. So you want to program these 2 numbers below here in your phones. If you put them in your contacts, you turn off your phone or turn it to do not disturb, you can have it. So those 2 contacts will alert you and you'll get a call at nighttime. That's what a lot of folks do. We turn our phones off at nighttime because we want to sleep. And that's why a lot of folks did miss the call in October. We ask folks, if you can, to create a managed account. And why is that? because phone numbers change, addresses change, and so that way you can go back in there and add a phone number or take a phone number out. I have no access to the Code Red database. It's that way for privacy. So if somebody has a question, the most popular question I get is, am I signed up for Code Red? I don't know, but if you give me your name and number, I'll send that information to Code Red and they'll let me know. And I know but that's the security thing. A lot of folks don't want anybody's name to go out there, and that's what we do. Next slide, please. So we've been working very collaboratively with 211. If you have questions, you want to sign up for Code Red, you can call 211 if you need some help. A lot of folks may not have a computer, can't go to the library to use a computer, so just call 211. They'll help you out. If you're calling from a cell phone that's out of an area code, the second number here, that's what you need to call, and you'll get a hold of 211. I just want to tell folks Code Red is not a perfect tool. It's just one of our tools that we have in our toolbox of many. We ask folks, if you get a Code Red alert, start monitoring the radios and media, other channels, because if it does go down or if we lose multiple towers, you may not get another message. I already talked about to sign up for Code Red, you can go on the Nevada County website. Big red button there says Code Red. You can call 211. And the next slide. So my next thing is red flag warning. Are folks familiar with red flag warning? Not as much. When I was a kid growing up in Paradise, that was drilled into us. Red flag, we all knew what that was. And that was the ideal, perfect conditions for a fire to start. November 8th was a red flag warning. We don't get a whole lot of red flag warnings in November, December, January, however they do happen. I do recall a red flag warning with a winter storm warning the following day. And that was, I think, a fire happened in Tahoe. The fire caught on fire, burned up the hill, and then this started snowing and put it out the next day type deal. Again, it's the greatest chance for wildfires. We want you to be aware of your area, your surroundings. Know that the fire is very aggressive. The rate of spread, I think they were saying 7 football fields a minute for the campfire at one time. That's a lot of area. And have a plan for nighttime. A lot of these fires now are happening at nighttime, and we have to be aware of what these things can do at nighttime. We've sent out a Code Red message in the daytime saying, hey, we have red flag conditions, and winds are expected to be 60 to 70 miles an hour. Be prepared to evacuate. When the Weather Service sends out their alerts now, when it says 60 or 7, they now say in their alerts, you may not have enough time to evacuate, so you may want to do some other type of planning. Okay, next slide. So I'll talk about emergency management systems. We heard about ICS, Incident Command System. That's pretty much taught to everybody from day one. It's been around since the 70s. It does work. It makes sure that we all speak the same language when we come into a location. We have the same organizational type structures. We work as a unified command. Yes, generally there's one person in charge, but all of us work together when it comes down to the incident. We all take advice from each other and then determine the best course of action. Information management, that's one of the hardest things for the EOC to do because there's so much information coming into the Emergency Operations Center, and we're trying to go through it very quickly and get it back out there for the public. We get a lot of exaggerated or false reports. It makes it frustrating, but it does happen, and especially in a fire event, because when it starts getting really smoky and the fire's spotting everywhere, it really does seem like the fire is everywhere, and yes, it is everywhere. Resource tracking, another key thing. You know, you heard Chief Matthias, he knows all of his engines and the different strike teams in the county. We all have that in our mind, and we know there's a limited amount of resources, but we do everything we can to use them effectively. So we use an operational area concept, which is just like a chain of command, so it goes all the way from the field up to the state and to the feds. And so my job at the county is an operational area. We take care of all the special districts, whether it be NID, the school districts, the fire districts, the cities. Let me see, I got a recreational district, cemetery districts, all those districts during a event. That's how we all collaborate. The Emergency Operations Center, we do not command the incident, we support it. And generally what happens during a big disaster is not just one incident. There's multiple incidents going all over the place. And so for the town of Paradise, yes, they were doing evacuations, but they were evacuating multiple hospitals, schools, just each an incident within one. And so I think I got my time done and it done. Yay, and I will be followed by Melissa.
I hope I get this right. I'm Melissa Perrette from the Nevada County Superintendent of Schools office, and it dawned on me while I was sitting in the audience that, well, I knew I'm the eldest of 4 children. There's a decade span in between the 4 of us, and we grew up in Nevada County schools, and each of us knew a student who died during our time in Nevada County schools. Motorcycle accident, wrecks on Highway 49, family tragedies, homicide, and also our cousin was at Lyndhurst for the Lyndhurst shooting, which was before many of school shootings had really hit the media. And back then, we just didn't have in place what we do now, and I'm very grateful. And I'm on the prevention, postvention side of things, and I am fortunate enough to work with a variety of agencies, but what I wanted to share out with you this evening is that we do have a critical incident response team. So in the event that there is a student death or a tragedy, we are able to dispatch a collaborative team of trained professionals. Sorry, I didn't think I was going to start out with that. That was a pretty heavy way to start. It just happened. Okay, but all of these professionals are trained in critical incident stress management, and they are from Nevada County Public Health, Nevada County Children's Services, and Nevada County Behavioral Services, and they are deployed by the request of the school. So we want you to know that that service is in place. They're able to provide counseling services or group services for students and also staff, because it's not just the students who are impacted by these events. Heather from 211 is here, and I just want to say we're so thankful to have a resource like 211 and Connecting Point in our community. You can dial the 211 number and have access to a database of over 1,200 nonprofit and public agencies at over 1,700 locations within Nevada County, supposedly. But everything from CalFresh to all of the things identified on that list. I happen to also be the homeless liaison for Nevada County, and when we have families that are homeless and in need of housing, they also call this line. So basically, and I think John had mentioned that you can call 211 to even get connected with Code Red. Is that correct? Thank you. So 211 is a wonderful resource. They have a table out in the foyer for everybody to look at. Nevada County Children's Behavioral Health is also a wonderful resource. I just wanted to share out that they don't always, like, we try to do the best that we can to meet families where they're at. And Nevada County Children's Services has the ability to send staff out to see children not only at their shop, but at the schools and at the family resource centers and at other places that are convenient for the family, and that therapy can be provided in both English and Spanish. And I also wanted to share out that parents can call behavioral health directly, and schools also have the ability to make direct referrals for service to children's behavioral health. There's a great deal of collaboration there. We don't do cold referrals to behavioral health. All of our staff has conversations with parents before they take that action. And then behavioral health will do a screening process and make a determination about appropriate services for that child. So that might mean that they refer to Sierra Forever Families for 8 to 5 support, or they may have the family engage in Victor Community Services, which offers 24-hour wrap services. So both of these agencies are able to go into the home and really help address the needs of a family. Nevada County Superintendent of Schools also has weekly collaborative multi-agency resource team meetings and the following agencies are present at that table every week for roughly 3 hours a week, where we are triaging the needs of families at most risk within our community. It's Child Protective Services, CalWorks, Public Health, Juvenile Probation, Behavioral Health, Victor Community Services, and Sierra Forever Families, and school representatives are always at those also as on a case-by-case basis. So with that, I'd like to introduce Marlena.
Thank you so much. My name is Marlena Maherin, and I am the TUPE project coordinator here in the county. So basically that means that I oversee all of the tobacco, vaping, and marijuana prevention education in our schools. And I have to say, all weekend I was sitting right where you are watching my daughter dance on this stage. She goes to NU. It's very tempting to have my moment right now, but for lack of time and talent, I will stick with vaping. But we are going to take a look tonight at trends with vaping, because vaping is something that I feel like it's really important for parents to understand about, since when we were growing up, raise your hand if you vaped in high school. Right, yeah, we didn't have it. So a big piece of the prevention component is educating all of us so that we know how to talk to our kids about what's going on. So I'm going to start by showing you a short portion of a video on vaping that was filmed right here on the Nevada Union campus. And at the end of my talk, I will have the link to where you can watch the entire video. It's 12 minutes. We're going to only look at about the first 3. And then I'll talk with you a little bit about what's happening here in our schools and what you can do to support your student.
I think kids think vaping is cool. Vaping is the new norm. Vaping is awesome. If you don't vape, you're weird.
Just makes you look like the tough guy, I guess. Breathing like a dragon. Exactly.
Constantly, there's kids in the bathrooms, so it's hard to go and use the bathrooms in class.
When it comes to vaping, most kids just do it because they want something to feel like they're like everybody else.
Now we're seeing it cross lines where it's, everywhere from athletes to kids in the auto shop, and basically it's getting through all groups now, so.
Vaping is a way for people to get their nicotine fix, essentially. It uses a solution that contains nicotine and other flavorings and other chemicals, and then it heats it up to high temperatures and you inhale it, and that's how you absorb the nicotine into your system.
I don't know what's in any of the vaping products.
I don't think they care about what's in it. I think it's the feeling that they get from it.
I don't think that kids think that vaping is the same as cigarettes. I think they think it's safer.
A lot of people think that e-cigarettes produce a water vapor, and in truth, they actually produce an aerosol. And this aerosol contains a lot of chemicals, including benzene, formaldehyde, cadmium, things that we know cause cancer, birth defects, and other health problems.
The way they package it makes it look cool to kids.
They make the devices in really strategic ways. I mean, there's a product called Juul. It's like a flash drive. And kids love sneaking these things into class and using them and hiding them, and teachers are kind of none the wiser. It's really crazy.
I know some people who have had a cast from breaking their wrist and they've put a device inside of it.
Or they'll take their Juul and put it in the water bottle tip, like the little tip that floats up. They use that.
They produce these products in all kinds of flavors that are really enticing to kids. They have cherry and bubblegum, cereal flavors.
First they start out with the juice that is just flavored, and then all of a sudden somebody puts some nicotine juice in there, and then we've even heard that they mix the marijuana liquid with the vape liquid, so you can't really tell what it is.
It oftentimes can lead to dual use, where kids are using both nicotine and marijuana, and we absolutely don't want to see that.
I would say 90% of my friends smoke. It's just You want to hang out? Cool. Where are we smoking?
I think parents should know that it's really easy to get vape or marijuana and that everybody does it.
So many people do it that it's just like the normal now.
I know some of my friends smoke to get away from life. They smoke to not feel pain and resentment with their family. If you're going through something at home or in school, it's so much easier to just let it all go and feel nothing.
Okay, so that's just the intro to the video. If you haven't seen the whole thing, I highly encourage you to watch the whole thing because it goes into a lot more information as well as what you can do as a parent. What's interesting, though, when I watch this video is the perception amongst the students on the campus that everyone is doing it, right? All of the students who were interviewed said that. And the reality is not everyone is doing it. The problem with them thinking that everyone is doing it, though, is that it makes it seem like it's not really a big deal and that it's not risky for them. So I actually have the most recent data that we have here locally on our high school students and how many of them have vaped either within the last 30 days or have ever tried it. So this comes from our most recent California Healthy Kids survey results, and we just got these, I don't know, a week ago or so. So with this survey, students fill it out themselves, so they're disclosing the information, and they look at 7th, 9th, and 11th grade. So from those age groups, students who wrote down that they had vaped 4 or more times, so they had tried it at least 4 times in their life. In 7th grade, it was 5%, 9th grade, 19%, and 11th grade, 30%. So clearly not the case that everyone is doing it, but still very concerning numbers, right? 30% of 11th graders in our high schools have vaped at least 4 times. And where this becomes even riskier is that, and we'll look at it in a minute, the amount of nicotine that is being put into these products is just continuously growing and rising. And they're finding that kids are becoming addicted really fast after just a couple of tries because the nicotine is so strong. Another statistic that we got from the survey results, in the past 30 days, 7th grade, 7% had vaped, 20% of 9th graders, 27% of 11th graders, and then you will notice both the 2 statistics for our alternative and continuation high schools, the numbers are really high, 63% for 4 or more times and 57% for the past 30 days. So it's not the case that everybody's doing it, but it's definitely the case that we need to be concerned and to educate ourselves about this because the amount of students who are smoking cigarettes is much lower than this. We had almost, wiped out the problem of young people smoking cigarettes, but now really worldwide, we have an epidemic on our hands when it comes to vaping. So if you don't know a lot about vaping, which I didn't before I started this job, there are 2 basic types of devices. And the original ones were these mod-based devices here that were really big. And they're the ones that create those huge plumes of vape that you can see when people are smoking them. And these are the ones that if you hear about in the news, maybe have exploded in someone's face because the battery was too powerful for the device. They had altered it with a more powerful battery. Those aren't as popular today as they were a couple of years ago. Today, especially amongst high school students, the most popular devices are what we call pod-based devices. And these are 2 of the most popular right now. The top one is called a joule. There's even a verb now that they refer to as juuling. And these devices always have nicotine. So lots of times students will say, well, I vape, but I don't vape the nicotine e-juice. I vape, the devices that don't have that. Well, if they're using a pod-based system, they always have nicotine. And Juul, we'll look at a graph in a minute, has a lot of nicotine. The one below, it's called a Sorin. It's starting to increase in popularity. It looks a lot like a little highlighter device, and this is not by accident. I've heard stories, these kids are using them in class, and I've heard stories of teachers not being aware that these are devices. One of the most sort of surprising one recently that I heard was a student who asked if they could charge their flash drive in class. And the teacher said, sure. And so there were a little row of flash drives. Well, you don't charge a flash drive. They were charging their joules in class. And the teacher, didn't realize that. So, it's important for educators to be aware of what these devices look like. The pod-based systems use a different kind of nicotine than the sort of original devices. They use what's called a salt-based nicotine, and it goes down much smoother, so it's not as irritating to their lungs when they first try it. And of course, usually they have some kind of really appealing flavor to them. So they're clearly targeting our students, and it's something that at TUPE we're trying to work on eradicating, but for now, they're very popular in our schools. So looking at the nicotine levels, in 1 joule pod, which is the little teeny tiny pod that gets attached to the end of the device that has the e-juice in it, it has the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. So what does this mean? Well, some students are going through 1 pod a day. Some are going through 2 pods a day. So they're absorbing a huge amount of nicotine very quickly. Aside from all of the irritants that are going into their lungs, which as of now, we don't really know the long-term effects because they haven't been around long enough, but what we're seeing, it's not good. There's a lot of chemicals that are being absorbed into their bodies and into their lungs. But aside from that, the part that to me is the scariest from the research that I've read is that by consuming or inhaling so much nicotine, they're priming their brains for other substance addiction problems because their brains are not fully developed. And so they're starting to see that students who are vaping a lot are then having problems with other drug addiction. So it's definitely a concern. FixPod, which is another popular device, has the equivalent of 2 packs of cigarettes, that amount of nicotine in one of its pods. And the Soren has the same amount of nicotine as 3 packs of cigarettes. So definitely something to be aware of and concerned about and to talk to our kids about. I've had lots of students come up to me and say, well, I only vape the organic e-juice, right? The nicotine-free organic e-juice. To me, that's a bit of an oxymoron to have an organic e-juice. But even if there is no nicotine in it, which you never really know, because as of now, this has not been very regulated, so a product can claim to be nicotine-free, and oftentimes it still has nicotine in it, it's still really bad for someone's lungs. So it's important to have that conversation as well. So in the video that I showed you earlier, there's a lot of advice on how to approach this topic with your kids, but just a few of the points that you can take away today is to make sure you're educated so you can talk openly with your child about the risks. Talk to them about what their goals are for their future and how getting, addicted to substances could get in the way of those goals. We find that teenagers who have really clear goals tend to do a lot better with avoiding substance abuse, teen pregnancy, all sorts of things like that if they really know where they're going in their future. Talk about peer pressure, what that might look like. We're seeing younger and younger kids experimenting with vape devices. I just talked to a coworker the other day whose 5th grader had come home and had tried it at school that day, 5th grade. So, we can't start too early talking about the risks. Try not to overreact if they do share with you. Most parents want their kids to come to them when they're dealing with stuff. And so trying not to overact is really important. Have clear rules and guidelines in your home about what your expectations are. And the last one I think is really important, and that's to model healthy ways to deal with stress. In the little video clip I showed you, that's a common theme that comes up, is that students are turning to things like vaping, marijuana, other drugs to cope, that they're really stressed out. And so to talk about healthy ways to handle that stress, but to also model some of those healthy ways ourselves as parents is really important. So this is the place that you can find the entire video. It's on the Nevada County Superintendent of Schools website under the TUPE page. It's also on YouTube, so you can find it there as well. I encourage you to share it with any parents you know who you think might benefit from the information. And I believe I'm turning it back over to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm pretty impressed. If you will all look at your watches or your clocks, your cell phones, we finished exactly on time. That's how well we collaborate and cooperate. So I wanted to just thank all of the people that participated this evening. Many of us got off work hours ago, but it's important enough to us to be here tonight to share with you the things that we know are going on in our county and ways that we're preparing to keep you, our community, and our children safe at schools. So if you will give our esteemed panel a round of applause and those in the audience. As well, we have quite a group of resources at the table in the foyer that have just invaluable information for you. Please don't leave without stopping and talking. And I'm going to dismiss this group so they can beat you to the foyer. Somebody block the door so they don't try to get out. And they are going to be there to answer any extra questions that you have. But thank you so much. Our goal from this evening, the evening has been recorded, and our goal is to get it on the school websites so other parents can see what was presented tonight that may not have been able to be here. So pass that word around. We'll get it out as, go ahead. We'll get it out as quickly as we can. Again, don't hesitate to contact any of us. Our desire is to provide as much information to you as you can possibly need, want, desire, so you feel confident in the plans and processes that are in place. Because really, school safety, community safety is our #1 priority. And our schools are a safe place to be. When you send your children each day, know that we care about them, we plan for their safety, and we want to communicate all of that to you anytime we can. So thank you, drive safe, and have a great evening.